you sign up for the newsletter on there's a button there, and that gives you like the topic of the evening, recordings of some of the previous evenings.
It's an amazing newsletter. I would imagine, is it Dan who does it?
Yeah.
Spends at least an hour or two on it, and it's worth reading. I mean, coming in. So definitely worth being involved in that. And, okay, so tonight we're going to discuss right speech. Just to give you a little review, and I think this is really valuable. I ordered the book just so I could use it, sitting up here, but I highly recommend it. So it is Mindfulness: A Practical Guide to Awakening by Joseph Goldstein. And just to give you kind of a, because I've tried to find, like, where's the dummy's guide to Buddhism? And this is close. So does cover kind of some basic principles. And I believe the Sangha has been studying it all year. So we're to the point, the group has gone through the 4 Noble Truths. And following that it's the Noble Eightfold Path. We're in the midst of the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right view, worldly ease, right view, liberation, right thought, renunciation, right thought, loving kindness. Last week was right thought, compassion, and this week is right speech. It will be followed with right action and right effort. So that's just kind of give you backgrounds. And then we're going to do some introductions following the intention with Scott, which Scott has agreed to read. So as he's reading the opening intention, I want to have us focus on our own personal intention, and that will tie in a little bit with the word. And I want to do a real quick just opening with the 4 Agreements, or some of you are familiar with that. It's a very well-known book, right? And does anybody know the first agreement? It's to be impeccable with your word, right? Okay, so I'm just going to read these 2 paragraphs, and I want to invite you to consider your intention as powerful as this would suggest. The first agreement is the most important one, and also the most difficult one to honor. It is so important that with just this first agreement, you will be able to transcend to the level of existence I call heaven on earth. The first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. It sounds simple, but it is very, very powerful. Why your word? Your word is the power that you have to create. Your word is the gift that comes directly from God. So if you didn't feel the pressure before, you may now to come up with the ideal intention. But don't, just be peaceful about it. And sometimes that is all you need. But look at it as, you know, as you kind of sit with this. And we'll do the introductions, like I said, after the intention is read. But there may be things that you hear in that. It is one of the most beautiful preambles that I've ever heard. I can tell you that it is the reason I kept coming back. They say in 12-step meetings, you know, similar kind of forum with a preamble, that you hear what you're meant to hear. And I always heard something in this preamble that I was meant to hear. And so I believe it sets the intention and the mood and the frequency, I guess, of what we will be doing here this evening.
We need to deepen our understanding and practice of Buddhism, meditation, and mindfulness. Our focus is on the insights of evolving Buddhist traditions and exploring other teachings of mindfulness practice. The Buddha's first and most basic teachings are that there is suffering, there are reasons for suffering, there is an end to suffering, there is a path to the end of suffering. Our path is to embrace every part of our lives, the joy, the sadness, and every experience in between. Our path is to let go of cravings and aversions, and thereby experience the enlightenment possible in each moment. Our path is to live in alignment with our values. The Buddha taught that we awaken and transcend suffering through a combination of ethics, meditation, and wisdom. In our practice, we aspire to cultivate the four limitless qualities: loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity. We approach all teachings in the spirit of the Buddha's advice. Do not believe anything just because it has been handed down for many generations, just because it is spoken and rumored by many, just because it is found written in religious books, just on the authority of your teachers and elders. Only accept what passes the test by proving useful and beneficial in your life. We welcome all who would join us in this journey.
So just a name and your intention, or you can just pull a word you want to bring into the space.
I'm Edward, and I guess my intention is just to explore and find it. My name is Callum. I'd say my intention is to realize the truth.
Jesse, and I want to accept what is.
I'm Antonia. Peace and balance.
I'm Ben, and I would say peace as well.
Start with me. Okay, I'm Sam, and I'm just here to learn more about guys, just this whole environment. So.
I'm Raina, and I'm also here to learn from you all and to experience. So.
I'm Krista. I'm here for clarity and understanding.
I'm Daniel. I'm here for self-acceptance.
Tim, that's here for grounding, or to be grounded back into these principles.
Madeline, I'd say my intention is learning.
I'm Jordan, and my intention is education.
I'm Todd, and I like the idea of being impeccable and transcending with that frequency, and meditating for my Cowboys tonight.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Todd is still good to be here instead of watching the Cowboys.
We got it. Buddha has humor too, guys. So come on.
It's a serious pronunciation.
It's got to be serious tonight.
Tim, and being at peace with what is.
I'm Mia, and I think just to be kind to myself about now.
I'm Dylan, and I guess learn to transform myself.
I'm Scott, and just to find balance and peace.
Okay, we'll go in line to Jared.
I'm Jared, and curiosity.
I'm Al, and my intention is to listen to the wisdom of the group.
Yes, Adam, you're right. My intention is to invite whatever shows up and give it space.
Emery.
I'm Emery, and my intention is letting go, especially from thinking.
Lucky.
I have no intention really. I'm here because I love hearing the opening intention as read by Scott tonight, and I'm just extra super pleased to see the population of the group increasing. I've never seen so many people. Very happy with that.
I believe you're calling me, right?
Right.
Mila. Okay. My intention is to learn and to unwind.
we brought, so, and you can feel just kind of all that positive presence. I want to just take a moment and just feel all of that and set our intention to bring all these intentions in. Thank you. So now we'll speak more about right speech. And obviously you can feel speech, can you not? It does carry a tone, a vibration, and it is powerful. And so to speak more about the book, how it has laid it out somewhat, it's pointed out that truthfulness is one of the most important things to begin with. Truth can be simple, but there's so much, I mean, there can be lies of omission, obviously lies of commission, but it's the first aspect of right speech. And in the Noble Eightfold Path, it says, truthful speech establishes a correspondence between our inner being and the real nature of phenomena. Thus, much more than an ethical principle, devotion to truthful speech is a matter of taking our stand on reality rather than illusion. And so we'll talk a little bit more about people do choose to speak out at times, or they choose to be silent. And just that in itself matters. That in the basics of right speech, the historical Buddha taught that right speech had 4 parts. And that is to abstain from false speech, do not tell lies or deceive, do not slander others or speak in a way that causes disharmony or enmity, to abstain from rude, impolite, or abusive language, and do not indulge in idle talk or gossip. And so there's a lot of thou shalt nots in there. But what I kind of liked is, as this article went on to discuss, this is by Barbara O'Brien, right speech from the Buddhist Eightfold Path. She says that words as nourishment, like words can be nourishment or poison. She says, once I took a cab ride with a driver who was listening to a talk radio show. The program was the litany of the host's resentments and anger towards other individuals and groups. The cab driver apparently listened to this poison all day long, and he was quivering with rage. He responded to the litany with foul expletives, occasionally slapping his hand on the dashboard for emphasis. The cab seemed filled with hate. I could barely breathe. It was a great relief when the cab ride was over. That incident showed me that right speech is not just about words I speak, but also the words I hear. Certainly we cannot banish ugly words from our lives, but we can choose not to soak them in. On the other hand, there are many times in one's life when someone's words are a gift that can heal and comfort. And so our first video for tonight, I get emotional when I think of how God worked in my life 10 years ago for me to run into a dear friend who was part of the Sangha, Judy, who actually followed Thich Nhat Hanh. I knew her before when I lived in Cache Valley, and when I encountered her years later, we were going opposite directions, but we had this 5-minute encounter on a walkway. And in that 5-minute encounter, she shared that, you know, and I had just learned who Thich Nhat Hanh was, so that made sense, you know, that mattered. And then she shared that there was a monk in her basement. There will be a book coming out called There's a Monk in My Basement. It is in progress. And the monk was Nithya, and he lived in Judy's basement for months, I believe, because his visa was delayed. And during that time, I would have not shown up at a Sangha, but I was willing to do consulting. I was a mental health therapist, and I wanted to understand more about mindfulness. And I sat with him in Judy's basement, and it changed my life. And so that is who we get to hear first.
We talked about National Geographic earlier. The mission statement of National Geographic magazine is celebrating what's right with the world. Mary Oliver, one of my favorite poets, says, wouldn't God be disappointed if we are not dazzled at least 10 times a day? Wouldn't God be dazzled? Wouldn't God be disappointed if we're not dazzled at least 10 times a day? One of my teachers, a wonderful Buddhist monk in Thailand, got quite sick. He was in hospital. While he was in hospital, one of his lady disciples comes and she starts complaining. While you're gone, the standards have gone down. In the monastery, the monks are not, the cat is away, the mice are going to play. And for 1 hour, 2 hours, she went on. This is not happening. That is not happening. The standards have gone down. You're not there. And when she finished, she just asked her a simple question. Do you know what diamonds are? She said, yeah, sure. Do you know what gravel is? She said, yeah, sure. Why have you only bought me gravel? So as we go through life, are we going like that second prince, the first prince who was only gathering all the garbage, the garbage truck? Or are we going like the first prince? The agarbatti represents things like gratitude. Things like seeing the best in others. How do you know you have a healthy personality? The more you can see the good in any person or situation, the healthier the personality. The more quickly you can let go of the unwanted, the healthier the personality. And the more you can get along with different kinds of people, with very different ways of looking than you do, seeing the world than you do, you have a healthy personality. So let's see. So first one is my ability to get along, my ability to see what's right in any person or situation. My father was learning something called NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And he was telling us at the dinner table that I've learned something in NLP, that there are two kinds of people. When they enter the room, some people will notice what's there and some will notice what's missing. So my dad said, wow, I realized today I always notice what's missing. When I enter a room, I don't see what's there, I see what's missing first. It's like a mind training, right? So some people, when they meet you, they'll immediately find what's wrong with you. And some will see what's good in you. It's just to notice how interesting. This is called metacognition, to become aware of your own cognitive process. This itself is transformative. So he had a big insight that day, right? So the propensity to see what's right and what can be right, what's possible and what can be possible. This is a healthy personality. To see what's wrong and what can go wrong, this is unhealthy personality. Second one, how quickly can I let go? The ability to let go when unwanted things happen. So when someone says, like, I call you an idiot once in the day, and then you repeat that statement 200 times, Nitya called me idiot. Nitya, I think he's only idiot. How can you call me idiot? You see, now what? I called you idiot once, you replayed that tape 200 times in the day and 5,000 times that year. Now who is the idiot? Come on, right? So how quickly can you let it go? Like if I call you, all of you right now, you all look like caterpillars to me. You really look like caterpillars. You find that so funny. What caterpillar? What nonsense? Because it didn't stick, right? But when I say all of you look like, very bad citizens to me, or you look very selfish to me, then maybe that will stick. Something, how dare you call me that? I think you're not patriotic. So those things really hurt because somewhere they resonate inside of us. It only hurts when someone says something that we secretly believe about ourselves. If I call you a caterpillar, it doesn't hurt. In fact, you find me funny. The whole session, I can call you caterpillar to make no difference. In fact, you'll say, yeah, I'll become butterfly one day. So you actually find something good in that, right? But if I was to say something else to you, if I say you're very, you're bigoted, you're this and that, then again, how dare you say that? How can you say that? You're ignorant. So how quickly can I let go when an unwanted thing happens? There's a lovely Tibetan word called Shenpa. Nice word to learn. Shenpa. Shenpa means stickiness. And the opposite of Shenpa is Rigpa. Rigpa means openness, open intelligence. A good example of this is the sky is like Rigpa. If I throw dirt on the sky, nothing sticks. It all falls back on me. If I throw daggers on the sky, nothing sticks. All falls back on me. If I throw flowers in the sky, nothing sticks. All falls back on me. So the wisdom traditions say your true nature is like Rigpa. In fact, it is Rigpa. Your true nature is sky-like. But your temporary nature, your superficial nature is Shenpa, sticky. So also always getting stuck. I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want. Notice when someone eats, someone got a cake, they take one bite. Oh, so good. But before they can even consume it and swallow it, what's the recipe? What's the recipe? Why do they ask for the recipe? What's the recipe got to do with it? Why? Because they want to control it. I like it so much, I want. I want to have it every day of my life. You see, this grabbing. So when a pleasant happens, you want to grab. When an unpleasant happens, you want to push. When a neutral happens, you get bored and pick up your phone. And that's it. These three things, this is all, our whole life is like we're oscillating between these three things. Pleasant, grab. Unpleasant, push. And neutral, get bored, get restless, get anxious, get disturbed, get confused. And that's basically, that's the play of our life. So once I went to my teacher and I said, I'm very doubtful. I have a lot of doubts coming up. Doubt in myself, doubt in the teachings. And if I'm honest, even doubt in you. He said, yes, the solution for doubt is just to know this is doubt. I love that. He didn't try to convince me. He said, no, just know this is doubt. Doubt is a aspect of the mind which will arise for everybody sooner or later. And just know this is doubt. That's all it is. Metacognition, the ability to be aware of what's happening now. So to know doubt as doubt, confusion precedes clarity. You cannot have clarity unless you've had confusion. To whatever extent you're finding me clear today, to that extent I have been doubtful and unclear in my life. It is not possible for me to be clear without having doubted. The Zen tradition says, great faith, great doubt, great awakening. Great faith is you believe what your parents say, you believe what your teacher says, you believe what society says, you believe, you're playing the good boy, good girl, and then something happens and you say, what the F? I mean, everything. I don't know. And you start doubting every single thing that everybody said, and you're just like, I don't know if I can believe anything. And look, I've been living in a matrix. What's going on over here? But you see, that is also necessary. It's called the dark night of the soul. So great faith and great doubt, great awakening. It has to happen. Everything that you believe in, you will have to doubt. In fact, the Buddha once in a large assembly he was giving a talk, and suddenly without explanation turned to Sariputra and said, Sariputra, do you believe what I just said? Sariputra was his right-hand disciple. And Sariputra shocks the assembly by saying, I do not believe what you just said. What? Sariputra doesn't believe what the Buddha said? And the Buddha smiles and says, explain yourself. And Sariputra says, why would I believe it? I know it. You don't have to believe something that you know. You only have to believe something that you're not sure of. You see? You believe something for which you constantly need proof and validation. Satyamev Jayati says in our country says Satyamev. Truth always wins. In truth there is victory. What I realized about truth is truth does not have to be defended. Truth does not have to be propagated. Truth just has to be lived. Truth is asking you to be it and live it, not propagate. Truth can take care of itself. Thank you. I mean, the entire universe is based on truth. There's a lovely book, Course in Miracles, which says that what is unreal does not exist. What is real cannot be threatened. What is unreal does not exist. What is real cannot be threatened. Therein lies the peace of God. Wow. What is unreal does not exist. What is real cannot be threatened. Therein lies the peace of God.
So, truth. Following truth, I want to talk a little bit about authenticity. And with that, I would like to invite you to consider what's also called congruence. So congruence would be that your emotional state, the words you say, your body language, the setting, it all comes together in this truth. And it's a very difficult thing to maintain. I'm sure you recognize that. So as you look at truth being something that it's something we can hold, I think, moment to moment. But the question is if our authenticity, it is our authenticity usually that would vary, right? The truth does not vary, but our own experience of holding that truth is what varies. And so I want you to consider now for a moment when you feel like you know something, but then that is challenged. It might be by a person in your life, it might be by a setting. You might walk into a certain setting and then start to question. When he talked about doubt, isn't that amazing? To just realize the power of that. In fact, it was so funny. I was thinking about that today. I'm like, because I went into total doubt this morning. And I had a very dear person in my life help me get back on track with my truth. But it creates that collision sometimes when we go into doubt and we're debating this within ourselves. So it might be a person will cause you to go into doubt, or you might read something, or it might be, like I said, a situation. But I want you to just notice that within yourself. We've created all this good energy around truth, but we're going to kind of do a little bit of processing. I want to invite you to take this opportunity and, first of all, just contemplate a time. It could be recent, or it could be, a long time ago, that you felt you had to step away from truth, or you were put in that dilemma with doubt and your own. Sit with that for a moment and notice how it kind of feels in your body, because usually there's a sensation with that. It could be a heaviness or a clenching of some area. Just notice that. You also might notice what would tend to come through your speech in those situations. It's common to go into excuses, to blame, to questions. And then if you were the observer looking in on you, what would that observer notice about you? What changes when your authenticity is questioned or threatened? So in a moment, we're going to have an opportunity to speak. And I'm going to invite the group to break into dyads, so partners. We'll include Zoom with that. So you have an opportunity to share this, to speak what you've just found about yourself. And the role of the other person will be to listen, to just be a loving presence. We're going to talk a little bit more about listening in a moment. But the opportunity really is to be there for each other in this experience, and it'll just be a couple of minutes per person. If you didn't already guess, there is another part of speech. It is listening. Let's see, right listening. So in the book, The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching, the Zen teacher Thich Nhat Hanh said, deep listening is the foundation of right speech. We cannot listen mindfully. We cannot practice right speech. No matter what we say, it will not be mindful because we'll be speaking only our own ideas and not in response to the other person. I thought about doing this first, but I thought it might be interesting to kind of look back at how you listened and see what you could improve on. It reminds us that our speech is not just our speech. Communication is something that happens between people. We might think speech is something we give to others. If we think it that way, what is the quality of that gift? Mindfulness includes mindfulness of what's going on inside ourselves. If we aren't paying attention to our own emotions and taking care of ourselves, tension and suffering build up, and then we explode. So being able to express is so important, but also being able to be heard, I think, is just as important. As we go on to, we're going to listen to Thich Nhat Hanh now talk more about listening. He talks with Oprah. That will be fun. And I believe Oprah listens fairly well. So we'll see how that goes. And Jared, if you'll pull that up. So you'll notice, I think he will speak of compassion, which was our topic from last week, which ties in really well with this.
You refer to, I can't remember which book, but you talk about deep listening also.
Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of the other person. We can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose, help him or her to empty his heart. And if you remember that you are helping him or her to suffer less, and then even if he say things full of wrong perceptions, full of bitterness, you are still capable to continue to listen with compassion. Because you know that listening like that, with compassion, you give him or her a chance to suffer less. If you want to help him or her to correct his perception, and then you wait for another time, but for this, the time being, you just listen with compassion and help him or her to suffer less. And 1 hour like that can bring transformation and healing.
So I love this idea of deep listening, because oftentimes when someone comes to you and they want to really vent, they want to purge whatever is going on inside them, people start talking and giving advice. So if you allow the person just to let whatever those feelings are to come out, and then at another time come back to them with your advice or your comments, you would experience a deeper healing. That's what you're saying.
Yes, the fear, the anger, and the despair is born on the ground of wrong perception. And we have wrong perceptions concerning ourselves and the other person. And that is the foundation for conflict and war and violence.
You've said that the only way we can begin to end war is due to communication between people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we should be able to say like this, dear friends, dear people, I know that you suffer a lot. I have not understood enough of your difficulties and suffering. It's not our intention to make you suffer more. It is the opposite. So please tell us about your suffering, your difficulties. I'm eager to learn to understand. It has to start like that, loving speech. And if we are honest, if we are true, they will open their heart and tell us. And then we practice compassionate, deep listening. And during the process of deep listening, we can learn so much about our own perception and their perceptions. Mm-hmm. And that is the best way, the only way to remove terrorism.
Terrorism or even difficulties between yourself and yes. family members or friends.
Yes.
And the principle is the same no matter the conflict.
Yes.
Terrorists, anti-terrorists,
yes.
father and son,
right.
yourself and your boss,
right.
yourself and your children, your best friend.
Yes.
Again, let's go ahead and send some gratitude. Thich Nhat Hanh passed, I believe, January of this year. But you know, Oprah's still out there, bringing people to some things. Anyway, so much gratitude. The fourth thing I want to mention today is related to this compassion, to kindness. And those of you who maybe followed my four things, there's a little acronym in there. So we started with truth, authenticity, listening, and then kindness. Anyone? Talk. There we go. So if you want to try to remember that, you can. So the kindness idea is related to this, the four immeasurables. So right speech relates to the four immeasurables. So first is loving kindness or metta. Second is compassion or karuna. Third is sympathetic joy, mudita. And fourth is equanimity or upekkha. Surely these are all qualities that can be nurtured through right speech. Can we train ourselves to use communication that furthers these qualities in ourselves and others? In his book, Returning to Silence, Katagiri Roshi said, kind speech is not the usual sense of kindness. It can appear in various ways, but we should remember that it must constantly be based on compassion. Under all circumstances, that compassion is always giving somebody support or help or a chance to grow. So I want to finish with a teacher that actually she has been, I would love to meet her. That is, I'm going to put that out there. I didn't share my intention, but my word is love. And Barbara DeAngelis is a teacher that I've never met in person. I did do a live training with her once, but I have been blessed by that woman's teachings since the 90s. And she has made a difference in my love life in a really big way because of these principles she teaches about love. And so her book, The Choice for Love, is what we'll listen to an excerpt. I want you to consider, she invites people to not only take in teachings, but she talks about using them in practical ways. So she's sharing a story that is taking this and applying it to an everyday situation.
The gift of your compassionate heart. Every act, every deed of justice and mercy and benevolence makes heavenly music in heaven. Ellen G. White. In my own life, I've found that the more I've expanded my ability to hold a vast presence of love and compassion, the more I'm able to truly serve, not just people who attend my lectures at seminars or come to study with me, but everyone I meet in even the most casual and transitory of circumstances. This is a true story. Several days ago, I took a break from writing and drove to one of my favorite spots here in Santa Barbara to spend a few refreshing minutes sitting on a bench and gazing out at the ocean. I noticed a young woman standing nearby, attempting to take some selfies of her face with the view in the background. Something inside prompted me to speak to her. "Would you like me to take a photo of you?" I asked. "That would be great," she replied. I posed her at the perfect location and snapped some photos I hoped she would like. "You're so nice to do this," she said. Something about the way she thanked me pulled on my awareness, and I could feel that her heart was hurting. So instead of sitting back down on my bench and wishing her a nice day, I stood there next to her. I asked her where she was from, and she explained that she lived in Greece and had come to California to visit her long-distance boyfriend, whom she'd met while he was vacationing in Europe last year. Before she even went further, I sensed that it had ended badly, and that she was in town sightseeing alone instead of having the romantic reunion she'd dreamed of for so long, and that she was devastated. In that moment, I felt the love in my heart rise up and reach out to wrap her in compassionate presence. I felt her feel it happening, even though she didn't understand what she was feeling. I experienced her melting into that unexpected field of love she'd been offered by me, a stranger. This all took place in 30 seconds, even though she hadn't said anything about what happened or what she was going through, and even though I hadn't asked. But I knew that she was feeling seen and somehow, mysteriously, witnessed in her pain. Suddenly, the floodgates of her emotions opened. She confessed that when she'd arrived in the United States, her boyfriend was less than welcoming, unloving, and cold. It turned out he'd met someone else and hadn't told her about it, and she had traveled all the way from Greece, only to be rejected. This all happened in the first 2 days of her 3-week trip. So here she was, traveling around California by herself, with only her broken heart as a companion. With compassion, I listened, With compassion, I felt her pain, the pain all of us experience when the foundation on which we've been standing and believed was steady suddenly cracks. When her eyes filled up with tears, so did mine. I was offering the presence of my love in this devastating moment on her human journey. I was participating in her sorrow, sharing her grief. L'hishtatef b'tsa'ar. I'm so sorry for what you're going through, I said softly, taking her hands in mine. Can I tell you something? She asked. I can't believe I'm standing here sharing all of this with you, and I don't even know your name. I've been too embarrassed and ashamed to tell my mother and my friends back in Greece, but something about you just made it all pour out. I'm so sorry I bothered you with this. Please don't apologize, I reassured her. I think we must have had a cosmic appointment, because I wasn't planning to be here today, and I truly feel honored that you felt safe enough to share your heart with me. Thank you, she said. You have no idea how much I needed this moment. I feel like I've just broken out of something so dark. Please, now that I've poured my heart out to you, may I introduce myself? I'm Alexandra. Can I know your name? It's Barbara. The girl's eyes got very wide and she gasped. That's my mother's name, she exclaimed. So, you did get to tell your mother everything after all, I smiled. The heart doesn't need information to be compassionate. It just needs love. That day, as I drove to the park, I had no idea that I was going to be in service to Alexandra. I wasn't looking for anyone to help or heal, but my heart lives in readiness to feel the pain of another heart, to share in the wounds of the world. I didn't actually do anything. I allowed love itself to do it. The miracle of that moment belongs to love, which, when we allow it to, will always find a way to offer us exactly what we need, precisely when we need it. When you begin to live with more compassion, you will radiate compassion to others. Your vibrational field will feel like a safe haven of unconditional love. People will feel soothed just being in a room with you or speaking to you, even for one moment. It will allow them to begin to have compassion for themselves wherever they are on their journey. We are all here to serve one another. Each morning we wake up and have no idea exactly how we will be called upon to serve. Understanding this, we prepare ourselves ahead of time to be a welcoming guest room of love and compassion for our fellow travelers who will cross our path, looking for the safe sanctuary of an open heart.
And again, let's send love to Barbara DeAngelis, who is still in California. So I'd like to have a little discussion as you've gone through this talk on what you could take from this, and especially as we leave off with this idea that there may be those out there that are meant to be heard with loving kindness. Anything else you'd like to share from?
Something I could share. Something that's been arising for me lately in relation to wise speech and wise listening is how important it is to continuously practice mindfulness. If the goal is, when these sort of rare opportunities arise to reduce somebody else's suffering through compassionate listening, I find it so essential that I carry compassion with me. Because if I reach that opportunity where somebody's sharing something with me and I get overwhelmed, or I feel I get overwhelmed socially, and the nuance of the eye contact and the word choice and all of that layer, the human layer of the communication. I find myself getting lost in that, and so it's so essential for this pattern of being to carry concentration and compassion, or else I can't muster that compassionate listening. And sorry, something that sort of connects to that. I'm reading a book on the Six Perfections by Nagarjuna, and he talks about this idea of outflow generosity, and how there's impurities that can enter into our desire to give compassionate listening, or to give generosity, whether it's listening or in other mechanisms. And yeah, that's what arose for me, is the essential layer of not being too lost in my own stories and in my own suffering and in my own listening to myself, if you will, such that I have the space to listen to somebody else.
I think just building off of what Jared said, so often when what I'm looking for when I'm attached to speech, when I feel like I need to say something, or I feel it's important that I'm heard, yes, something is going on inside that is not at peace. I actually find that what's interesting, there's some suffering in there, there's some attachment, whatever's going on, that when I actually show up and listen to somebody, or and take that role in the speaker-listener dynamic, that's actually what I needed. What I needed wasn't to be heard, to be right, to express my view. What I needed was the connection, was the compassion. And when I show up in that space and listen, all of a sudden I don't need what I thought I needed to get out. That wasn't it. And so it requires that, sort of like Nithya was saying, that meta, that awareness of what's going on for me. I have to not only listen, have right speech, but be aware of what's going on inside when I'm listening and when I'm talking, so I can show up, because that's usually what I needed. That was the remedy I needed, was the listening.
There's something. A word I learned in this group a while ago is bodhisattva. The idea that one of the greatest things we can do with our own lives is to dedicate it to relief of the suffering of others. And so one thing that's been reinforced for me today is just how much listening is a part of that. We can relieve a great deal of suffering through compassionate listening. And bonds that we have with other people in communication, even just receiving communication, doing that right, we can relieve a great deal of suffering in the world that way.
Okay, and let's take 1 minute to just kind of shake around and move, if you would, before we sit for 15 or 20.
Oh, good idea. Oh.
We'll do 15. And during our meditation time, I'd like to invite you to just kind of sit with what you've already kind of found today, your word. If you want to start with your intention. The processing of that authenticity, that truth, and the compassion that we felt.
I don't want to take too much time, but I guess I'll share something that came up from that first video where he was talking about truth and how the truth needs no, you don't need to prop it up, you don't need to propagate it, and you don't need to necessarily defend the truth because it stands on its own. And I loved that, and I feel like maybe this might be helpful for others in the audience, but when I first started on this path of Buddhism, I brought with me sort of a false view of absolute truth, or even an idea of that Buddhism has the truth. And what I found was not, here's the teachings, here's the truth, I'm going to give you the truth, but Buddhism was an invitation to investigate what arises from the present moment. And I feel like this resonates with what he shared about how if you can be mindful and allow the truth to arise, that seems to be the wisdom within Buddhism. And I thought I'd share that.
That reminds me, Jared, of the notion that we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Another, I guess, piece of this is when you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. And the power of silence. And I know that in my own mind, I run into that clashing of doubt and unbelief probably way too often. And so, again, our thoughts, as we talked about, previously, definitely are part of our speech, because we hear our own speech on a regular basis, probably more than we hear anybody else speak to us. And the power of silence, it took me, that's what I credit Shanti with, is the journey to get there. When he was very supportive and gave me the pieces on the path and the process to get to silence. And if you're on that journey and not quite there yet, know that it is a practice. You do not arrive at it instantly. All right, well, I'm gonna turn it over to Tim to read our closing. Oh, also I wanted, before closing, Jared, would you be so kind as to share the links along with the recording so people can get the full, like Nithya's talk was like over an hour, and any of those we want to hear again. Thank you so much.
And so for those of you who are new, if you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get all those links.
Yeah.
Get the full version of Nithya and Thich Nhat Hanh and Barbara. May all of us here tonight know happiness.
May all of us here tonight know happiness.
May all of us here tonight be free from suffering.
May all of us here tonight be free from suffering.
May all of us here tonight dwell in peace.
May all of us here tonight dwell in peace.
May all beings without exception know happiness.
May all beings without exception know happiness.
May all beings without exception be free from suffering.
May all beings without exception be free from suffering.
May all beings without exception dwell in peace.
May all beings without exception dwell in peace. Oh, and I would like to invite the box. Yes. Anyone who'd wish to donate the Dharma, it's not donation, it's Dharma. What does that mean again?
Generosity.
Oh, generosity. Thank you, yes. Generosity. And it also supports the rent and the
Yeah.
retreats.
I use the PayPal on the website for Donna. Nice. There's an easy recurring thing that you can do. So I found it to be very easy and set that up. So
well, that's all we need. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Cristine.
Thank
you.
you.